Blind Date is my favorite pure episode of Angel this season. Now I say pure because most of what has been great so far was inherited glow from its sister show. Spike's appearance in the Dark, Buffy and I Will Remember You, and Faith in 5x5. And while there have been a few great episodes exploring Angel's character, Blind Date feels like one of the biggest steps towards establishing the broader themes of the series. The episodes leading up to it have shown signs of the writers finding their voice, but in Blind Date I think we can see the emerging shape of a design.
I get visions.
We do things a certain
We open on Angel doing angel things before a blind woman comes along and kicks his butt. Pretty good action sequence. I think we're nearing the point where we can safely say Angel's action choreography is better than Buffy's. The woman in question is represented by Wolfram and Hart, and Lindsey gets her exonerated. Holland Manners, the current reigning boss at Wolfram and Hart, pulls Lindsey aside for a kind fatherly talk.
This is kind of our harvest time of year, where we separate the winners from the dead weight.
Evil folk do enjoy themselves a good harvest, don't they? He suggests that Lindsey is shortly going to need to make up a horrible childhood to excuse something their blind assassin is about to do.
There are some children arriving. They pose a threat.
Some children.
Angel is angry over the court loss. In walks Lindsey.
What was your father? He was a merchant, right? Linen and silk. Did pretty well. Had a couple of servants till you killed him.
Just the one.
I love the detail that he knows Angel's history as though it were last week. It speaks to Lindsey's abilities. Lindsey agrees to help Angel steal some files from the office regarding the targeted for assassination children. Angel recruits Gunn, using a pretty good grasp of Gunn's character to tempt him to the job.
Give me one good reason.
It'll be extremely dangerous.
Okay.
An Ocean's 11-style break-in at Wolfram and Hart ensues, with Angel grabbing the files on the children and a scroll he's uncontrollably drawn to, Lindsey distracting security, and Gunn causing a ruckus in the lobby.
Evil white folks really do have a mecca.
J. August Richard's smile is a bit like looking into the bright sunshine. He is so handsome. Lindsey gets cornered on the way out by Holland and some mind readers. There's an odd little bait-and-switch here where Holland shoots evil Bazinga instead of Lindsey.
I'm sorry, Lee. I truly am. Bazinga! Bazinga! And in secret talks with Klein and Gabler.
Bazinga. Bazinga.
You planned on taking clients with you when you left to join them.
Bazinga. Bazinga. Bazinga.
Holland sits Lindsey down for another fatherly chat while he's covered in evil Bazinga's blood, a detail which makes the scene particularly chilling.
Are you afraid? Well, it's understandable.
You afraid of me, Lindsey?
He lets him go and asks him to think things over. Back at headquarters, Cordy is talking on the phone with Willow, trying to get the files decoded.
Willow says hey.
Hey.
Cordelia makes mention of some discs Willow is working on. I love that Willow is the one Cordy goes to.
Okay, so how do we save it?
Deliver.
Deliver? Where's that? Oh.
Angel finds the den where the children and assassin are. After the pretty cool fight in the opening scene, the cramped quarters for this one make it look a little campy. I thought all of her senses were heightened. He's a 200-year-old walking corpse. She can't smell him at that distance? What about all that sweet, sweet product he has to put in his hair? Angel kills her, and in the end, Lindsey succumbs to the temptations put in front of him by Holland. And Wesley tells Angel that the ancient scroll he stole from Wolfram and Hart actually mentions his name. Blind Date is a great little episode and very sneakily introduces one of the show's broader themes, and that is the question of fate. It's an idea the series plays with through its use of prophecy and the powers that be. Because this episode raises questions that are played with throughout the series, I'm not going to do a full breakdown of the ideas yet, but we'll be speaking more generally. For my complete thoughts on these ideas, come back for the review on Not Fade Away. But there is a nice little mirror theme going on between Angel and Lindsey in this episode, which culminates with them both being told they're a part of some bigger design.
No one has their own life. We're all part of something larger.
There is a design, Angel. Hidden in the chaos as it may be, but it's there.
Is there an inherent contradiction between the Buffy versus thematic emphasis on existential philosophy, which is defined by our freedom and the necessity of making choices in every waking moment, versus the idea of fate, which feels like such a deterministic and mutually exclusive concept? If meaning is derived from the choices we make and the actions we take in pursuit of it, then isn't the very notion of fate and determinism in opposition to that goal? Is fate or design not in some way nihilistic? This isn't the first time the Buffyverse has touched on determinism versus free will. In Prophecy Girl, Giles discovered in the Pergamum Codex that Buffy would face the Master and she would die. After she toyed with the idea of leaving Sunnydale, eventually she made the choice to descend into the Hellmouth and face the Master, only to discover that her decision was what actually set the Master free. And sure enough, the prophecy proves correct, and she dies. So if her death was predetermined by fate, then was her choice ultimately meaningful? Of course, the most common mythic portrayal of fate is through Oedipus, the Greek myth. Oedipus was the son of a king that tried to thwart a prophecy by having his baby killed. The assigned assassin took pity on the child, and eventually Oedipus ended up the adopted son of a different king and queen, who never explained to him his heritage. When he learned from the oracles that he would kill his father, and not knowing of his original birthright, Oedipus left his step-parents to avoid the prophecy. On his travels, he met a man he quarreled with and killed his father. Then he came upon a kingdom with a recently deceased king. Oedipus saved the kingdom and married its queen, his own mother. Keep it in the back of your mind. We'll be returning to the idea of fate as the series continues. But I do love the structure of this episode. As I mentioned, Lindsey and Angel are set up as mirrors of each other, and the story presents them each with an existential dilemma. To this point, the wrongs done to Lindsey in the past have justified his ignoring his conscience in the present. He speaks to Angel unrepentant for the evil he's empowered, talking about poverty and the hard life he lived. But he's about to take part in an act so heinous that his conscience is telling him,
I don't want to be here any more than you want to see me. I don't have a choice.
You always have a choice.
And Angel points out very rightly,
You're panicking right now. You can't believe how bad you let things get. That's not change.
which proves to be true in the end. Lindsey doesn't change. Angel has been choosing to act honorably, turning Vanessa over to the authorities. But when he does, the system fails him and sets bad people free.
How am I supposed to fight evil if they won't even put it behind bars?
He's feeling the hopelessness and the odds of this battle. His team is small and the enemy resources are vast. How is he supposed to maintain hope and justice in a battle so hopelessly unjust? Will there ever be an end? This is despair. An Angel longs for the unambiguous, impulsive ways of his pre-soul life.
I remember what that was like. Sometimes I miss that clarity.
When there were no hard choices to be made. Lindsey does as his conscience dictates, and returns to Wolfram and Hart in the end. I think it would be tempting to think that Holland lets Lindsey off a little easy, but if you look closely, the important details are there. When Lindsey is justifying his actions to Angel, he describes his father's lack of will.
I was 7 when they took the house. They just came right in and took it. And my daddy's being nice, you know? Joking with the bastards while he signs the deed. So yeah, we had a choice. You got stepped on, or you got to step in. And I swore to myself that I was not gonna be the guy standing there with a stupid grin on my face.
And Holland speaks to him throughout the episode, as a father would. And in the penultimate moment between them, Holland plays off Lindsey's feelings of his dad's weakness.
It's no mean feat, since most men are cowards and just move with the crowd. You walked in that door and called me by my first name. You never did that before. You wouldn't have had the nerve. But you're different now. You stood up to us and won.
I think for Angel, there are 3 significant points in the episode. The first is the way in which he convinces Gunn to help him.
Give me one good reason.
It'll be extremely dangerous.
Okay.
In Warzone, Angel was acutely aware of Gunn's death wish.
Look, I can help you. Unless, of course, death is what you're after, then you're on your own.
He made a point of saying Gunn and the Lost Boys were under his protection. And yet, in this episode, he uses that knowledge as a way of convincing Gunn to help him. The second is how poorly he advocates for Lindsey's soul. When Lindsey shares his pain, Angel mocks.
Dribbled out.
I nodded off. Did you get to the part where you're evil?
When Lindsey might need saving, he shrugs.
You're not going back for him?
If he made it out, then he'll be here. If he didn't, then there's no reason to go back for him.
Faith tried to kill everyone, and Angel didn't give up on her. But Holland says he believes in Lindsey, speaks to him kindly, and offers him direction. How different the series might have gone if Angel had acted differently. Finally, at the end of the episode, having figured out the blind assassin's Achilles' heel, he doesn't capture her to take her back to the authorities, but instead... Does this represent a moment of Angel buckling to his earlier despair? Not a lot is made of the fact that Angel just murdered a woman. The rules of engagement when it comes to non-demons in the Buffyverse are a bit murky, but Angel just tried to advocate for Faith's rehabilitation, and given the mirror structure of this episode, I think we can read this moment as Angel succumbing to his desire for the impulsive clarity he described.
There's no torment, no consequences. It's pure. I remember what that was like. Sometimes I miss that clarity.
I absolutely love these kinds of moral complications in Angel. I've said that if Buffy is a show about growing up, then Angel is a show about being an adult. And more than any other episode so far this season, Blind Date establishes the murky ethical morass of adulthood, and foreshadows some of the twists and turns yet to come. The plot of the episode may be working with extremes like murder, but if you look closely, these are very relatable questions. Do the wrongs or abuses done to us before not entitle us to a better future at any cost? Is the unfairness of the present not an ethical justification for shortcuts in the future? I wonder if the fallacy lies in the belief that suffering is some kind of cosmic unfairness. Lindsey's childhood suffering created in him a willful disregard for his conscience, anything to avoid that pain again. No choice. It's implied that Faith was touched by evil.
You can't touch me!
And once she'd committed an act from which there was no going back, her self-hatred created a meteoric spiral of destruction, perpetrating the very wrongs that were done to her, and eventually culminating in her attempt at suicide by cop. And now, Angel. But if some amount of pain and suffering is inevitable in a lifetime, as rainy days or lonely evenings, then maybe the trick is not to try and live a life avoiding it, since we can't. Rather to choose what we're willing to suffer for. The battle is every day, and it is not fair. But if we allow that unfairness to dictate our actions rather than our conscience and commitments doing so, then we have given up our true freedom, we've given up ourselves, and become an object in the universe at the mercy of its circumstances.